Hello, I'm Bob Dunn, Chief of the Fullerton Police Department. This critical incident community briefing is intended to provide you with information about an officer-involved shooting that occurred in the 3600 block of West Avenue on the evening of May 27, 2020. You are about to see relevant video footage and photographs, hear radio transmissions, and learn of other evidence and facts so you have a better understanding of what occurred during this incident based on what we know today. We are still in the preliminary stages of this investigation, which can often take up to a year to complete, and our understanding of the incident may change as additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. Additionally, we also withhold judgment and do not draw any conclusions about whether or not our officers acted consistent with our policies and in accordance with the law until all facts are known and the investigation is complete. A word of caution: the images and footage you are about to see may be disturbing. When a police officer uses force to arrest a suspect or fend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. Further, the circumstances surrounding the use of force may also be disturbing. In addition, there may be strong language used by those shown in the video. Viewer discretion is advised, especially for young children and sensitive viewers.
I'm Lieutenant John Radis. I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of an incident that occurred on Wednesday, May 27, 2020 at about 10 p.m. At that time, Fullerton police officers were dispatched to a residence in the 3600 block of West Avenue regarding a family disturbance. The Fullerton Police Department Communications Center received two 911 calls regarding a disturbance at that location. The first was from a juvenile male who indicated his stepfather was drunk, had assaulted his brother, and was armed with a knife. As the dispatcher was obtaining additional information, the caller told the dispatcher his stepfather had armed himself with a gun and he had fired the weapon twice. Here is a portion of the call made to FPD dispatch.
911, please.
My emergency is my stepdad to hit my brother and they're fighting right now.
What address?
My address is, Hector, what's the address?
Avenue, he has a knife, hurry up.
Who has a knife?
The owner of the house.
And this is your dad?
Stepdad.
What's his name?
Hector Hernandez. He just didn't come fast.
He has a knife on him right now?
Yes.
Where is he at?
Over here, he hit our...
Is he still in the house, or did he go outside, or what happened?
He's outside trying to do it. What?
What did he do with the knife?
He pulled it out because...
And he pointed the knife at you?
There's a window.
Hello?
Hold on. Someone locked the doors.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, what is Hector wearing?
He has a white shirt on, and he,
What color pants? Hello?
Put out a gun on me. He just started shooting.
He started what?
He started shooting at me.
Shooting like a gun?
Yes, like a gun. He has a pistol.
He has a gun now and he actually shot the gun?
Yes, he shot it twice.
Is anybody injured?
No.
Where is Hector right now? Is he still in the house or is he outside?
No, he's out in the front yard screaming.
He's in the front yard screaming?
Yeah, he's shooting a gun.
What is he upset about?
He's drunk. He's drunk.
He's drunk?
Yeah, he just brought out his gun. He pointed it at me.
He pointed the gun at you, but you said he shot the gun also, right?
Yes.
And as far as you know, nobody's been injured?
No.
As the male was speaking with the dispatcher, a separate reporting party called 911 and advised she had just heard 4 to 5 gunshots in the area. Here is a portion of that call.
911 Fullerton Police, what is your emergency?
I think I heard gunshots.
Where? Where are you?
I'm at Fullerton Avenue.
We have officers on the way there. How many gunshots did you hear?
Please get in here.
How many gunshots did you hear?
In here. How many gunshots were there? How many gunshots? 4 or 5.
Okay, 4 or 5. Stay in your house. We have officers. Stay in your house. We have officers on the way.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Based upon the information provided by the caller, the communications operator made this a priority call for service and officers were immediately dispatched. You will now hear a portion of the police radio traffic associated with this incident.
136.
36.
Still in one, 415 family. 415 between RP and stepdad. RP is saying dad Hector is armed with a knife. 328.
Wait, copy and route code.
328, copy and route code.
36.
136 so far. We can hear screaming in the background now. Hector's wearing a white shirt. RP is now saying the subject is armed with a gun and fired the gun.
328, go on the route. Go through. Have medical state.
10-4.
37 code.
10-4.
114, I'll be in route. Go through.
114.
And you tell them last, I'll be in route.
They're advising the subject to the front still has the gun in 390.
20. No, okay, I'm 98 from here, and off to the left.
10-4. RP is advising the subject went back inside the house. It sounds like there's another son inside, and we have neighbors also calling, confirming shots fired.
320, go.
Total 415 families at the res involving death.
36, can they still hear gunshots?
Negative.
And see if you can safely get everybody else out of the house.
Steph. They're advising Hector's inside the res, and his 8-year-old and a 13-year-old are also inside.
No, okay, go 97.
10-4-10-3 on green 1, tell code 4.
The suspect involved in this incident was identified as Hector Hernandez. When officers arrived on scene, they learned Mr. Hernandez lived in the residence with his girlfriend and their 5 children. It was relayed Mr. Hernandez had just returned home from a family party. He was intoxicated and had just assaulted his girlfriend on the drive home. When Mr. Hernandez and his girlfriend arrived home, he assaulted his girlfriend an additional time and then assaulted one of his juvenile sons by punching him in the face. When the juvenile was assaulted, his siblings intervened in an attempt to stop the assault. Mr. Hernandez then brandished a knife, which caused everyone to separate. Mr. Hernandez then retreated to his bedroom and re-emerged holding a handgun. In response, Mr. Hernandez's girlfriend yelled at the children to leave the house. As this happened, Mr. Hernandez racked the handgun and pointed the handgun in the direction of his girlfriend and children. As the family was running from the residence, they heard 3 to 5 gunshots. The following surveillance footage shows the family fleeing their residence. All Fullerton Police Patrol officers are equipped with body-worn cameras. Fullerton Police Department policy requires all body-worn cameras to be worn chest level in a forward-facing position that facilitates comprehensive recording of contacts and/or incidents. You are about to view body-worn camera footage from that perspective. It's important to keep in mind that body-worn cameras are an investigative tool, and like any device, they have limitations. Body-worn cameras do not necessarily capture everything an officer sees, just like the body-worn camera may capture something an officer does not see. Further, body-worn cameras do not have the ability to depict what an officer is feeling or experiencing during a given incident. The first officer to arrive on scene was a canine officer with his canine partner Rotar. After being on scene for several minutes, a male, identified as Mr. Hernandez, walked out of the house and out onto the sidewalk. At this point, Mr. Hernandez was a suspect in an attempted murder, felony domestic violence, assault with a deadly weapon, and felonious child abuse. Officers began giving Mr. Hernandez commands, including to keep his hands up. He initially complied. At one point, Mr. Hernandez began to walk backwards towards the front door of his residence, where a 9-year-old child was believed to still be inside. Knowing that Mr. Hernandez had already committed several acts of violence towards his family, including discharging a firearm and brandishing a knife, the canine officer deployed Canine Rotor to apprehend Mr. Hernandez. This was done to prevent Mr. Hernandez from re-entering the residence. Officers continued to give Mr. Hernandez commands to keep his hands up. However, as officers approached him, he lowered his right hand to waist level. Canine Rotor began to apprehend Mr. Hernandez, and Mr. Hernandez fell to the ground. At some point, Mr. Hernandez produced a knife, and an officer-involved shooting occurred. You will now see the body-worn camera footage from the involved officer.
Hey, here's a man's coming out the front. Hey, dog. Fast, here, runner, here. Fast. Here, runner, here. Fast. Get on the ground. Let me see it. Hey, fast. He's got a knife. Fast. Loose. Let me see your hand. Watch out. Off.
You will now see a portion of the footage at a reduced speed. You will now see the body-worn camera footage from a nearby officer.
Hey, put your hands up! Put your hands up!
With you guys. Yeah, watching.
Hey,
With
put
you.
your hands up! Here, I got you long hand.
I'm with you on your left.
Hey, put your hands up, Hector! Put your hands up, bro! Hey, do me a favor, bro! Hey, Hector! Talk.
Got it.
Hey, back up in the street,
Here,
bro!
runner,
Keep
here.
your hands up!
Here, runner, here. Fast. Let me see it. Hey, fast. He's got a knife. Fast. No.
Let me see your hands. Put your hands on top of your head.
Hey, show us your hands!
Hey, I got verbal. Put your hands on top of your head.
Hey, I got him.
Hands on top of your head.
The following still images were taken from the canine officer's body-worn camera footage. As seen in the video and from the still image, Mr. Hernandez was armed with a knife in close proximity to the canine officer as he moved to release Canine Rotor from the bite to facilitate taking him into custody. In response, an officer-involved shooting occurred. The following evidentiary photos are of weapons associated with this incident. The first is of the knife Mr. Hernandez possessed at the time of the officer-involved shooting. The second is of a handgun recovered inside his residence. Immediately after the officer-involved shooting, officers began rendering medical aid to Mr. Hernandez. Paramedic personnel arrived and continued treatment of Mr. Hernandez. He was transported to a local hospital where he passed away. Shortly after the officer-involved shooting, officers saw blood on K9 Rotor, and it was learned that Mr. Hernandez had stabbed K9 Rotor near his shoulder blades. You will now see body-worn camera footage from the K9 officer immediately after the officer-involved shooting.
Yes. I gotta put him up for a minute. I think he's been stabbed. I don't know. He was stabbed and he's going after me. I don't know.
The K9 officer transported K9 Rotor to an emergency veterinarian hospital where he was treated for his stab wounds. After this incident, the decision was made that K9 Rotor would retire. Here is a photo of K9 Rotor's injuries.
When a critical incident such as an officer-involved shooting occurs, 3 separate and comprehensive investigations are initiated. The first investigation is conducted by the Orange County District Attorney's Office, which determines if the actions of the involved officer were within the law. The second investigation examines the criminal culpability of the suspect. This incident occurred in the city of Fullerton, and as a result, the Fullerton Police Department Crimes Against Persons Unit will investigate any criminal conduct of the suspect prior to or during the incident. The third is an internal administrative investigation, which determines if the officer's actions met the high standards we hold for all our employees, and to ensure they acted in accordance with department policy. Over the next several months, the Orange County District Attorney's Office and the Fullerton Police Department will continue to investigate and analyze this incident to determine whether the actions of the involved officer were both within the law and within department policy. The job of a police officer is often difficult and dangerous. Although we train and work hard to de-escalate volatile situations, officers must react, sometimes in a split second. The decision to use lethal force is not something we take lightly. It's truly tragic for all those involved. Thank you for taking the time to view this critical incident community briefing.